Thank you, Madam Chair. One of the topics we've really spent a lot of time and energy and effort on over the last couple of years have been our middle schools. And I wanted tonight to have Mr. Poole, who is, as you know, in just, I don't know, just a little over a month, will be taking the reins at Lexington High School as the principal at Lexington High School. We're super excited to have him going back out to a school. But he has been working really diligently with our middle school staff and our middle school principals rather, about some scheduling options that we can do at the middle school to maximize time, place, and space. I think that's the phraseology we like to use. So, Mr. Poole, take it away.
Madam Chair, thank you for Thank you. I'm excited to talk to you tonight about middle school scheduling. I think Mr. Calhoun and I, we think middle school scheduling is way more exciting than maybe the normal public, but it's a kind of wheelhouse we live in. And like Dr. Little said, it's really less about the traditional thinking about a schedule and more how students move through time, space, and place to create the ideal kind of learning for them. And that was one of our goals with this strategic plan, to really examine how we were meeting the objectives we wanted to meet with our 11 to 14-year-olds and those in the middle years. So one of the first things we did when we started that strategic plan, and I've spoken to this board about this before, was to pull together a focus group, and it's been continuing conversation since then to really talk about what we wanted to see out of that use of time, space, and place. And one of the biggest priorities was this idea of dedicated time for advocacy, and we've seen that come to life in our high schools. We're seeing it in our elementary schools, but that was a big priority for our middle school faculties and principals. In addition, we wanted to get away from this idea of creating kind of false choices that you have to do this or you have to do that, and you must. You either have to choose between a performing art or a language. So we looked for scheduling opportunities where we could create kind of the best of all those worlds. In terms of the measurement, what we wanted to see was a move. We had seen over several years that our middle schools were not progressing at the same rates as our elementary and high schools. And we wanted to see if we could stop that. So what you see on this screen are a lot of the goals and measures that we had hoped to see some change in. The school closure has not allowed us to collect a lot of the data that we would have hoped to have seen, even in terms of time in classes. So we wanted to see a move of all of our middle schools to overall ratings surpassing average. No middle schools with unsatisfactory ratings. As you know, this year, we're not going to have the state accountability ratings. And even in terms of the impact of time, we had made some shifts in the schedule to allow teachers in the traditional core classes, those that are measured by accountability measures, to have more time with their classes, because that was what we found, from the teachers, the students, the stakeholders. We need to see our kids more face to face. So the great irony of the first year of a new middle school schedule that's built around the idea of more face to face time is that we ended up, getting the opposite of that here towards the end of the year. So we've done some data collection, just sort of anecdotally and qualitatively, kind of telling the stories, and some principal perspectives. So we had 4 middle schools try a new schedule this year that had a 3 elective option that gave some of that flexibility. And what they saw were, they tell these stories of kids not having to give up opportunities in the arts and physical education and science, STEM and robotics in order to get academic assistance at our schools that have students who need special education or intervention. So this schedule was allowing them to get both that intervention and still participate in those extracurricular connection activities that are so important. Head back. another piece that we talked about was the um, really the ability to honor world language. So it wasn't about necessarily giving up world language options. You can still have that, but this new schedule allowed it was just it sort of tweaks in time. So one principal described it kind of as the best of both worlds. And then finally, really just increasing without the school closure, the face-to-face time of this new schedule would have given math and reading teachers 30 extra hours in the year with their students, which we were really excited to see the results of that this year. So this is just a look at Beachwood Schedule, which 4 of our middle schools adopted this year. And this is on one of their advocacy days. So you can see that the students have 3 connections classes, which include a world language, a performing art, and then perhaps an intervention class, while they also have extended time in their traditional core subjects that are measured by accountability. And that's worked really well for them this year, and the other 3 middle schools. So each subject was able to get that additional planning and instruction time. Academic progress for all students was a priority, and really flexibility, and that was the big win for this schedule. Looking forward to next year. So we've been able to transition. So we've got Beachwood Middle School, Lexington Middle School, White Knoll Middle School, and Pleasant Hill Middle School that were on the 3 elective schedule this current year, and as well as Pelion Middle School. So Carolina Springs Middle School and Gilbert Middle School will be making that full transition. And then as Meadow Glen Middle looks towards 2 years from now as one of our bigger schools, getting stakeholder feedback and seeing how that works with their programs moving forward. So that's kind of where we stand for next year. So with the use of time, space, and place, it's all about kind of choices and how we create more opportunities for students. With that, we find the challenges as we go along and kind of make adjustments. We really hope to have some data from this year, but the stories that we're hearing are those gained opportunities for the kids that have been a real win. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer.
When will the next touch point for some type of standardized data to compare year over year? Will it be the fall assessment test will be our next touch point?
Yes, sir, Dr. Power. So we'll take STAR 360 tests, which are formative tests in the fall, and we'll really see, we're already anticipating working on some materials for like some summer launch. So kids are in all sort of different places. So what kind of materials are out there for a parent like me who has a child going into a high school level class next year? And so looking at materials, but then he'll be assessed when he goes in the fall. That's not state accountability tests, but we will have some standardized kind of assessments to look at where all of our students are in terms of mastery of at least numeracy and literacy.
But I guess in actual classroom hours, our students actually had less time with their teachers this year than when they did the year before. So we really can't make any conclusions about this change for another whole year, probably.
That's correct, because even when the teachers say, yes, I had more time, I mean, at the end of the year, they cumulatively didn't have more time. They had less with their kids. So it'll be a full year.
Well, I just would like to thank you, and I thank our middle school principals. And I'd like to thank Dr. Little. I think, Dr. Little, this has kind of been one of your dreams to make some of these schedule changes and really focus on some of these core courses and put more emphasis. And middle school's tough. And I can say that from being on the board for 20 years. It's tough. It's everything. You just get a lot of hormones and a lot of growth physically, mentally, emotionally in middle schoolers. And it's just nice that we're really focusing on this. So thank y'all for doing that. And I want to thank the middle school principals as well, and the teachers, because it's a lot. But I'm really pleased. And thank you, Dr. Little, for making this one of our things we emphasized in Lecture 1.
Absolutely. Now, having said all that, that may not any of that necessarily be in play for the fall, because we're not 100% sure where we are for that. But we do have a great plan. It is a wonderful foundation, and it is my hope that we can really unleash the full power of this reorganization of our middle schools. I think across the board, it's going to make, and forget standardized testing for a minute, just to tell you that, as I have always told you, that's really the lowest form for me in terms of effectiveness. But I'm so excited for the choice that our students are going to be able to make. I'm excited for really how our teachers can leverage that time into some powerful learning experiences. And so lots of great things taking place in our middle schools.